Deciding how to orchestrate my Claude Code agents, I looked through Anthropic's agent documentation. It had 100+ agents, which is great, but I didn't know which ones I actually needed and how they work together. Every other orchestration tool was very expensive and didn't have a clear process for me to follow. So here's what I built. It's a 5-agent process working in sequence through a central handoff folder. It starts with the researcher. Researcher passes the requirements to the architect. Architect passes architecture to the implementer. And the implementer passes the implementation to the tester, and then finally the code reviewer. No repeated work, no lost context, no wasted tokens. One system, 5 focused agents, that's it. To show you this flow in action, I'll go ahead and fire up Claude Code here. And I'm gonna start by actually calling my fun guy agent, who wasn't in the original documentation, but this is just to help give me an idea of a simple app that I wanna make. My friend Annie lost fantasy football, so I'm asking for some fun prop bets and other ideas to add into a betting app to bet on what her time is going to be. And so you can see we've called the fun guy agent, and he gives us these ideas. And from here, I'm going to say, okay, I like the extra prop bets, especially the time range idea, to have really specific time ranges that people can bet on, and leave the others off. And then you can see I type @ here for our researcher agent, and I say give it some context, and I'm going to talk with the researcher agent to actually come up with the requirements. And here now we see in blue our researcher agent is called, and you can see it's getting the context, your friend Annie, and the researcher comes back to me with questions. One thing I do want to show really quick is that this is an empty project in Visual Studio Code. So now I'm going through and filling out the questions and kind of having a back and forth with Claude about what the actual app is and what the requirements need to be. So it asks questions about like access and roles, types, and scope. And so now we can see it's writing this requirement document, and it sends it to me for approval. So I'll scroll up to the top. This is the O1 requirements MD, which in this agent structure, I told it that I want it to label the file like that. And we'll go through, and we've got all of our details about entities, these non-functional requirements. This is kind of what I need the researcher for those important requirements that I don't think about. So I'll hit yes, and it's going to go ahead and write to that handoffs folder, that 01 requirements document. And then now we can see the architect automatically gets called from there and reads the requirements documents at the handoffs 01 requirements text. And right away, the architect has questions about tech stack, and so I go to say like, what do you recommend? Because I want this to be conversational, but we can click chat about this, and it asks me about what I'm thinking, and I ask for the common patterns, common techniques for an app like this, and what I'm familiar with, and I get a good recommendation and options from my architect, which is what I want, and then I want to be able to make the senior level decisions. And then I say, I like the option, but I want cloud storage, so what are Postgres cloud storage options? And I make the decision to go with Neon, because I know I'm maxed out on Supabase, and I've used Vercel before. And so now I get some questions about scoring model, bet visibility, all things that an architect should think about and a senior engineer should be fit to make decisions on. So now we've given all of the requirements to fill out the document, and the architect wants to create this O2 architecture file. So we'll scroll up to the top, and here we go. You can see it's still in that handoffs folder. And yeah, we won't look too much into this. Typically, the researcher should be 2 hours, architect should be 1 hour, but for this application, it's not that big of a deal. So now if we look, we've got our handoffs folder and our 2 documents, and we're being asked if we can call the implementer agent. So now we've got our implementer going through and reading the handoff documentation. And it's asking to CD and dir, so list things in folders, and that's okay. Yep, wants to list everything in the folder, we say okay again. And we've got a phase breakdown of what the implementer wants to do. And for now, I'm just having them write the plan to the handoffs folder, and then we're going to call the @tester agent to create some test cases based on what the plan phases are and what our requirements are. So implementer writes, we look over it, say yes, and now we've got our tester reading all of the handoffs folder, all of the documents, and here are our test cases. We say yes, the tester wants to write to the test folder or test file, and sweet. Now if we look, we also have some adjustments to the settings based on what we allowed, but we've got all of our tests, and that's a big file, so I won't go through all of it. And now we'll call our project manager to create a Claude.md file. And I keep mine under 300 lines because it's easy for it to get really big, but just an overview of the project before we push to GitHub. So you can see we called our project manager, and this is the Claude.md file. We'll accept it. And from here, we'll pop back over to Visual Studio and take one more look at all of the folders that we created. So we've got our settings.local.json, our requirements doc, our architecture doc, our implementer test, and our Claude.md. And just to clarify, when I created these agents, I said, this is what I want the format of the file you create to be. These are the questions it needs to answer, so it knows when to stop asking me questions and to fill out the document. In terms of usage, I'd say about half of this current session usage is from what we just did, so like 12% of my 5-hour period. Now I want to push what we have to GitHub, but I want an agent who is an expert on writing commit messages. So in Claude Web, I say, hey, help me build this prompt for this deployer agent, and we go back and forth asking questions about exactly when I want this agent to be triggered, which this is the pattern I follow for all of my prompting for agents. I start in Claude Web and have my EPCC agent expert actually help me write the prompts. So we've got some final clarification, approval flow, when do we want this agent to be called, and it produces this prompt for me to input in the creation of my Claude agent. And so back in Claude, we can fire up our Claude Code. We'll go to agents, and here's where you can see all the ones I've already made. So we've gone over most of those. Create new agent. We want this one to be personal, so I can use it on all my projects, and I always do the manual. Name will be deployer, and I will paste the prompt that I got from Claude Code from Claude Web into here. And when should we use this agent? I also got this from our web conversation, so I'll paste that in. And then in terms of tools, this one should not need to edit. In the advanced options, you can see I'll just uncheck edit and then continue. And then I always use Haiku just to save my tokens. And I'll make this one green because I'm pretty sure GitHub is green. So now if we scroll down, we see our deployer, view agent. You can see it's missing a lot of our system prompts, so this happens with a lot of mine, so I have to go through and edit them, open them in the editor, and then, yeah, so this is missing a lot of the prompt that we came up with. So I'm going to recopy that, paste it in the editor. There we go, so we've got everything that was missing. So yeah, if your agent is not working right, go through and check the actual prompt. And this part at the top, I don't need. And I'll save this file, X out. And then you can see we get this message now that since you edited it, you need to restart Claude Code. So I'm going to exit, fire it back up, and let's see if we've got our updated prompt. So I'm going to go through to agents. You can see we've got our deployer, view agent, and yep, now we've got our full prompt, so it should work correctly. All right, so switching back to our old Claude tab, if we search for the @deployer now, you'll see it won't come up because we've made changes, so we have to exit out of this session and start a new one before we can actually use our deployer. So I'm gonna call @deployer and say, help me initialize Git repository. And I stopped it because I saw it wasn't actually using the deployer agent. So I said, I want you to specifically call this agent to open up a separate context window and not use the current one. And so we'll proceed. and it's trying to config an account with beermiledev and a dev@beermile.local email, and I say no, I already have a GitHub repo link and I already have a Git account, so I will just send you the link. And I clarify that I want the local and origin branches to be main to start with. And sweet, this is what I wanted it to do. It came up with its own .gitignore because I noticed that I didn't have one, so I'll say yes, please make that for me. And here's the commit, looks good, so I'll say yes. And there we go. I send my URL that I created in GitHub, and it pushes, and I get the all clear that it's pushed. All right, so in terms of the handoff process itself, these are the formats I gave to each of my agents, and I said, present the documents with this label in the handoffs folder with this format. So requirements in architecture, these are generic, but I gave explicit instructions of what I wanted these documents to look like. So it would keep conversing with me until it got all of this information. And then for the implementer and tester, I didn't give specific document formats, but these were the specific questions and categories that I wanted it to have. Thanks for watching.